Justin, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Well, something's going on with the Yeti. This is the audio from the computer, so which I can't leave it on this, and so just give me a sec here.
Nothing. Not hearing any of that stuff, Stephen.
Right there.
Trying to.
It's a little different.
Test.
Yeah, I can hear that.
Okay. Is that still doing things?
Yes, I can hear it.
Weird. I'm gonna have to read the manual on those because.
So you're just kind of going.
Yeah. No, that's
okay.
that's what it should be doing.
Okay.
I guess they're muted.
Scott,
So I wasn't gonna-
would you mind shutting the door for us?
I've
Yeah,
received
shut the door.
mail
Thank you.
on
Okay. I think
this
we're.
computer.
I think we're.
It's just hard.
The outside one, just for noise.
It's really a.
Yeah.
So if somebody comes on, do I need to bring?
Well, it'll pop up a thing to allow you to admit. It'll pop up a thing like up there. You can.
Okay, yeah,
But-
let's see it automatically get
Okay,
it.
see, there's Sherry just right
Yeah.
there.
When it
I guess
gets
it
in
didn't
there,
pop it up, but what you can do
go through,
is
scroll
go
up,
over here and when you hover over it, it'll show
So
the
there's April.
See that?
28th. These are the most current right there. And to get them, you just
So,
touch them.
So you touch.
so you can just use the touchpad, just go over and tap admit.
Okay, this is there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just go property sales or, I don't know why it's not giving me that.
Yep, I'm good. Which Wi-Fi is he on?
Harrington City.
Yeah, it's barely gonna reach. There's a Spectrum Wi-Fi hotspot that's for this this building. It's a lot closer. It'll go a lot faster.
Spectrum Mountains.
Yeah, so
Okay, right
here,
now,
Peter, give me this for just a sec.
we're gonna change your, server.
So take a look, David. So we want to go to Spectrum Online Hotspot,
Right.
and it's not password protected. So,
That's for him here. Okay.
right, that should make it go a lot faster.
Okay. A little late here, but we'll go ahead and get rolling. Call the regular scheduled council meeting to order at 7:08. If there's any visitors with us online at this time, you can, if you wish to, you can go ahead and announce your name. Any in the audience that would like to announce their name? Lisa Halling, Scott McGowan, Jess Silhan, and Joe Armand. Okay, thanks, guys. Okay, Any additions to the agenda before we get rolling?
Yeah, I would like to briefly discuss the Snowbird allowance from the discussion last time regarding inactive race.
Okay. Any other additions? Okay. Move on to approval of April meeting minutes. Saw Steven sent an email with a couple of small corrections. Any major changes that anyone has a problem with, or
To the agenda or to any part of it?
the meeting minutes?
Yeah, a couple. Just typos. Stephen Hardy should be PH, should it not?
Yep.
You caught that, I presume. Stephen Marsh, SH, under visitors. And second paragraph, I would propose slightly different wording. It currently reads, is intended to principally benefit low and moderate income persons. The purpose of the CDBG is to benefit communities. I would propose something like to benefit principally communities with low and moderate income citizens or something to that
Okay.
effect.
Where is that?
Second paragraph, end of the first sentence.
So I sent, as Nathan alluded, there's a number of little changes, but a few things I thought were of note. The first paragraph on the CDBG, when it says, this is the fourth line, it says 25% dash 0.5%. I'm guessing that's 25 to 50. Or, well, that doesn't make sense because that's interest loan. So there's something in that that's not quite right.
It's a 75-25 split, and then the interest, I think it's 0.5% is how that should.
Oh, okay, that's what that's.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's the second numbers.
I got you.
Interest rate.
Sorry, I meant to turn, I came in and one of the first things I did was turn up the heat, but the problem is I didn't realize that the heat was off. And I was like, why isn't this thing turning on? So anyways,
It's okay.
yeah, Lions Club, you can't hear anything before that thing turns off. In the ecology public hearing, the last line, I think it was actually Peter that asked Andy whether this would change the classification for operator.
Yep.
Last sentence, okay.
And then in the sale of the Mack fire truck, it is technically correct to say that I had a preference for not setting a minimum price since it has no value to the city, but that was in the context of it being at the market reasonable value. I wasn't just trying to push that off, and I'm not saying that this makes it out that way, but since this is the record, I just want that to be noted that I was wanting to tie that to market value. And then lastly, and I had seen this verbiage used elsewhere, so I just thought it was pertinent to note that in the public comment section, where it says that Councilman Hardy explained that the council was looking at addresses that were perpetual buildings remaining empty for years. He went on to say that it's cheaper for the city if the system is being used. Specifically, that comment was in regards to the sewer system. And I just note it because it is not the case for the water system. So if someone's thinking that I'm saying that about water rates, that would be incorrect. So.
Okay, we've got a copy of your changes, Stephen. We can get those fixed, and then Peter's as well.
Cookies.
One other point, if I may.
Sure.
under visitors and clerk, was Cynthia still not present at the last meeting?
I was.
Good point, yes. Okay, good catch,
Oh.
Peter.
I know, I locked myself off.
Modesty.
I'll put myself in there.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
I know we were late.
Okay, well, I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes as corrected.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Steven, seconded by David. Any more discussion on May meeting minutes? All in favor, approving the minutes with corrections, signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you, guys. Okay, moving on. Bills. We can try to go through document by document. I noticed on the email, the original email there, I had a problem, at least on my email, that it wouldn't let me view all of the pages. So I don't know if you guys had that same problem, but obviously I've seen them elsewhere, but
Yeah, mine was, it was hard to follow. They were kind of split.
Well,
you got all the pages showed up for both paid and unpaid.
paid is only one page, right? Or no? Because I'm only seeing one page of paid.
Oh, that's true. It just, yeah, I have a error at the bottom that says cannot display all pages, but you're correct, it does.
My router burned out at home, so I have no internet right now.
There should be more than that. You have this one, Steven, it just has one
Yeah.
transaction at the top.
Just stamps. And it is listed as page 1 and it has the signatures at the bottom. So that implied to me that it was the one and only.
Yeah, actually correct. It has a total of 165, which is the only,
Scroll,
Okay.
see mine, it's that way, and I scroll up and then I can get into the other document, all of them.
okay. Well, I will redact what I said then.
What category does page 1 fall under?
This is, the first one we were talking about was the paid claims. Yep. I guess that's the easy one. How about any questions or concerns on the unpaid claims?
I don't think so for me.
Yeah.
Oh, I did have one.
Okay,
The digital infrared thermometer gun.
that was a purchase for the lagoon. That was
Oh.
Scott, yep.
Okay. I was just curious because I thought that was going to be like a COVID thing. I'm like, I thought we did our COVID purchases. So
I usually check the sample temperatures and motors and.
Yeah. you can point it at yourself for good measure, take your own temperature, you can, yeah.
Doubles both.
Yeah.
Just a quick note for me, no concerns, but item 324, to see that is, we agreed last meeting to pay for the application process to
Yeah,
Andy to
I
prepare
noticed
the CDBG application. I know I had to take a double take at that, so I just thought
It's
maybe,
324, you see?
yeah. I didn't know if you guys,
Yeah, I did. I had to go over that one twice and I was like, oh, right. Yeah.
yep.
I just have a question on 320. First choice spraying the lagoons.
Weed spray for the lagoons. There's some chemicals that we cannot legally spray, correct? So we contract that.
He's spraying a steroid that we can't spray. Trying to
Okay.
keep the weeds down.
Strictly herbicide, it wasn't for mosquitoes or anything like
No,
that.
no.
Okay.
We give swimming lessons for our mosquitoes.
And I guess the next one is 323. Was that for the backhoe or?
That was in that. There was some other additional stuff on there, but the backhoe bill was in there.
I just wonder how we put it here, park, cemetery, water, sewer, supplies. That's why I was asking. It was just supplies.
Spread it over several accounts.
Yeah.
So it's not one huge chunk of change coming out of one of them.
correct?
Okay.
I just, well, you know, listed as maintenance on a specific rig or whatever.
Sure, different description.
Question on 325. How is our annual membership with EDC calculated? Do you know?
That is by population.
Uh-huh. Thank you.
Yeah. Actually intended to bring that over with me. I didn't.
What vehicles are we sending on the road right currently? That we're paying out of town gas and also the city gas.
So the stuff here at the Grange would be backhoe, the 1 ton. That's pretty much it.
Yep.
And then the 1 ton is,
Gas cans for.
Yeah.
We don't break it down, diesel, gas, or anything like that.
it's broken up on the bill, but no, it's not broken down here. No, that's just the total of
I
the
just,
Grange
so
bill.
city fuels, but probably should. Not trying to nitpick, but when I say gas,
Are you on 3?
322.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think, yeah. That's good. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I just saw on that one.
So,
here-
Hey, Nathan, those are the memos. So those are just like memos that we write, but they get categorized differently in bias. So if you look back on the first page where there's the stamps thing, it says stamps for billing. But then this is a paid claim. When you look at it, it says 401, 403, and 420. So the memo is kind of like whatever we want to put in there, but it gets calculated or gets put in bias under a separate code. that's
Sure, it goes
applicable.
under the correct line items. That's just a memo to the clerk or to us as a mayor and council.
Well, Justin, do you know if that segregates or separates diesel fuel and gasoline fuel?
It depends. I don't know what it does. It depends on what the clerk is putting into bias, but if you look back, like on the first page, you'll see under 297, it just says stamps for billing in the memo, but
Right.
then in the details, it shows it's broken out 3 different to 401, 403, and 420. So it's all user input. So whatever Cynthia is putting in there now is how that gets allocated. But the memo is just like what Nathan said. It's just a note for us so.
I don't think, David, to your question, I don't think the diesel and gasoline is separated. Like we don't have 2 separate line items in the budget or anything like that, but it will get split between the different departments, between the different funds.
Right. Well, I know it all comes out of the same honey hole, but just to kind of keep track how much, diesel, like what we use in gasoline, because I have a question on the out of town. I don't know where it's at right now, but there's a bill for that. I just got curious how much running around, which really isn't a problem. It's just we're still doing that because we're sending a lot of tests by UPS, are we not?
Yeah.
So is that cut down?
I sent one today.
Yeah.
They're once a month. I send one, I take one over with
Still
all the
goes.
DMR information
Right.
and I download the influent meter and take it over there.
But that account, I guess my question, to reiterate here is we're still traveling. What vehicles are going out of town?
Just the 1 ton.
Just for parts or for,
Just the one time when I do
yeah.
AAA and then I'll pick up some stuff in town if I need to.
It's more than taking samples up there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's like,
Usually try to do that in the
Yeah.
same trip, parts,
Right.
anything that's needed from out of town, plus the once monthly sample that goes up. Or the sample that is taken physically.
right, okay. I have no further questions.
Okay,
Move to adopt,
okay.
approve. Sorry.
We have a motion to approve the bills and by Stevens, seconded by Levi. Any discussion?
I think One last thing, the Chevron credit card, we're still using that.
Yep, we need to get rid of that.
That's soon coming off.
Yep,
Okay, all right,
but that is still currently
Okay.
the out of town one.
okay. Yield,
Okay, all in favor of approving the bills,
aye.
signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you, guys. Okay, mayor update. I don't have a ton, but we'll go through quick what I have. You guys might notice Scott's here with us. He is still here as an employee. He's staying with us until his retirement date. We haven't officially, or we haven't hired anyone yet, so he agreed to stay on and work with us and for us until June, till we get somebody hired, hopefully very quick. So I just want to bring that up. So thank you to Scott for doing that.
Thank you.
And I've been trying to find you as you've been going around town sometimes because it's been a busy week for work. I've seen the car going around. It's been your wife, but if I had caught you, Scotty, I was going to say thank you because I know I had talked with Nathan about the delicacies of trying to navigate all these transitions at once. And so I very, very much appreciate.
No.
Well, I'm very appreciative, and I think we all are
Yes.
on the council that you were willing to step in and do that for us. So thank you very much.
Kind of on a little bit of the same subject, I just kind of wanted to update the council on interviews. I sent you guys an email as I have interviews scheduled and kind of where we're at. We've had one clerk interview. I had a second clerk interview, applicant interview yesterday. Ran late at work and wasn't able to make it, but so we've got one clerk interview done, and there is a public works interview as well as another clerk applicant interview tomorrow. I sent you guys the email. If you guys wish to be involved, definitely get a hold of me, but just to kind of let you know where we're at with that.
So you're saying a total of 3 then?
We'll have 3 done tomorrow. Yep. I'm gonna try to squeeze in a couple, maybe even.
2 for the clerk and,
Yep, we'll have 2 for the clerk and 1 for public works.
okay.
What else? That's about it. We're still waiting on streetlight parts. So
The
that's
light was delivered, but the pole is coming in this week.
this week.
What I
Okay,
understand.
okay.
Hey, Nathan, this is Justin. What about, looks like there's some active water leaks in town. How are those being addressed, or what's the timeline for those?
I got one done and the other one's over on Glover or on Alice, and I've got to do it yet.
Do you hear that all right?
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Scotty.
He said they had 1 done and there's another to go.
Got it. Thank you.
Is that kind of the normal when we switch pumps?
As of today, yes.
Okay.
We switched pumps last week.
Yeah, late last week.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have much else, guys. I just wanted to update on the interview, and obviously that's a pretty high priority thing to get clerk hired and public
And
works people.
Public Works, where the one that's being interviewed is for Charlie's position, not
Tomorrow's
Not
interview
Scott's
is
to
for
be,
Scott's.
oh, it's for Scott.
Yep.
Okay.
The question, how many applicants do we have currently?
3 of each. So
Okay,
3, 1, 2. There's 3 for the clerk, 1 for Scott's, and 2 for Charlie's.
Okay.
And against all odds, I think we have one that's pretty well qualified for Scott's job. So
Good.
have we, I don't know if appropriate or not, but do we have any idea what we're gonna offer them? Salary or range, benefits, anything? Do we have that in the back of our mind?
there's not a range set. We have not set a salary range from
Well,
low to high.
we have the banded salary range as far as the position range. right?
Sure, that's
Yeah.
true. Yep.
Do any of the applicants for Scott's position have level 2 wastewater treatment plant licenses?
Potentially, person for Scott's job was a group 1 already and was testing Monday for the group 2.
Good.
But I've not talked to him. I won't know that till tomorrow. And I don't know that he will know if he has passed that by tomorrow, but obviously that will be a topic
What time is that interview tomorrow?
for Scott's.
Yeah.
5:30.
5:30, okay. You probably just said that and.
No, I don't think I
Paying
mentioned it,
attention. Okay.
but it might,
Email.
yeah, that's true. It was in the email.
Question, if I may.
Sure.
Am I correct in assuming that if the applicant chosen has a level 2 qualification, that we don't have to hire Casey Mung?
As I understand it, yes, that is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Appointment of Kathy Matthews to the PDA. So last meeting, she turned in the day of or the day before, and I forgot to put it on the agenda, so I want to make sure I get it done this meeting. There's spot on the PDA open, and Kathy Matthews has submitted a interest and willingness to join and wanted our approval.
PDA stands for.
Public Development Authority.
And currently, where do they meet and what do they do? Does anybody? Or we want to skip that part?
No, I can touch on that. I'm trying to figure out the date. I have it saved on my calendar, so I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. It is the 3rd Tuesday of the month.
Third Tuesdays, okay.
Yep. Their main goal is to, I mean, it sounds cheesy, but to help develop Harrington, especially focused on the downtown area, on the business corridor downtown. But so that's a pretty wide range of things, but
Was that the organization that was concerned with with the face, how the building looked, the appearance and stuff like that?
that'd be the Preservation Commission.
That was a
I think the
different-
PDA may come into that
Okay,
at some point, but that's mainly the Preservation Commission.
okay. Get those two mixed up.
Has there been anyone else that has expressed interest?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Who's Kathy Matthews? Is she a resident of Harrington? And does the position
Norm.
require a resident of Harrington?
I don't believe it requires to be a resident of Harrington. She's in the outskirts. She lives in Moeller.
I'll move to appoint.
No, second.
Okay, we have a motion to appoint Kathy Matthews to the PDA by Steven, seconded by Levi. Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I,
Okay, thank you, council. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, we have some, just some discussion points here. And the first one on the list is update on code enforcement. David, I'll kind of yield the floor to you.
Okay. I don't have a whole lot at this time, but what I did find out last week and a half, I made some phone calls and I was able to contact Renee Honey at the Lincoln County District Court. And extensive lengthy call with her. And we we went kind of into the history, what Harrington used to, last few years, 5 or 6 years ago, under the Mayor Dylan Haas, I think it was. And there's been some changes in 2010 on abatement of vehicles. However, they didn't have any more ticket books anymore. And she told me, she recommended I get a hold of Wilbur ordinance regarding nuisances and vehicles and such, because they say she said that that was one of the best written ordinances in the county. I've not been able to get a hold of anybody. She did say that you can look on it online. I have not done that. But probably going forward from here, we should probably sit down and look at that a little bit, see how it compares to our current ordinance regarding that. I guess that's what ordinance
462.
462. And what it pertains to and how to do it, achieve our goals. They did, or she did also say that recommended me to contact Andy Mankey, Chief of Police in Reardon, because he was kind of up on some of these ordinances and the ticketing. Lincoln County, the court, they didn't have any more of these ticket books. So when I contacted Andy, he just ordered up a case of them. So Reardon's busy at it. And he said, these are generic ticket books and he'd be happy to drop one off to Harrington City Hall. And so as I understand it, he did.
He did.
And he had some, I was hoping that Jay was here, our code enforcement officer, because there's a few particulars or things you address that you have to report when you write those infractions. They have to, a report has to go with them because they're blank. There's no anything with them. And so I think he's probably figured that out by now. But going forward, we still have to meet with the committee on our current ordinance or the council, whichever we want to do, whatever works, and decide on, it does lay out the proper order to use for the code enforcement officer, meaning you just don't slap a ticket on somebody in infraction. We have a, first of all, the violations written up, and then they appeal it, or they come to us, the council, and then we discuss it and decide what's the best remedy here. But it's the code, basically the tickets are a last resort, for non-compliance or somebody or whatever. And it's also used, I found out, just retract here a little bit, that most of the towns around here are writing, especially Davenport for one, use these tickets and write infractions for dogs at large. They mostly have problems with animals. So, okay, I thought that'd be interesting, but I don't think Harrington is quite there with that. But I know that Jay has expressed concern about writing infraction, or not infractions, but violations, and contacted it, but there's no other avenue for them. Now, from what I understand, when you go to, if you have to go to that extent, it gets turned, he writes an infraction, and then it gets turned into the district court. And then by then, from what Renee Honey was saying, if I remember right, was that it gets turned over to collection if they don't pay. It's out of our hands at that point. But I don't think, like I said, it's a last resort. I don't think there's going to be a lot of tickets being written out. And certainly it's not our goal or our motive to just write everybody tickets. But however, it is a compliance tool. So I'm learning more of it, and I'd like to, once we compare the two ordinances that'll fly, that we like. And I know they do have, I apologize for jumping around here. I'm just trying to go by memory. They do, the MSRCs, most of the cities, towns in the state have the same fine schedule or fine increments and listings. I know Sprague, for one, they just upped theirs to, the max is pretty much $250. I think Sprague said they maxed out at 500. And I don't know if they still are that way. I mean, this was here a month and a half ago. I contacted, I don't know her name, the clerk there. can't remember, but I believe the maximum penalty for any of that was 500. We start out, from what I remember reading, like 25 and then 125 and then 250 is the max. Keep in mind that there's 30 days, 60 days, 90 in a year, longer
Incremental
wait.
times.
Yes, incremental. And the longer the non-compliance, the bigger the fine. And I hope we don't get into that, but that's just what I have found out. And it'd be nice, my recommendation is the council sit down with our code enforcement officer with all this stuff and come up with a plan of what we expect and where we're going to go from there, what we're prepared to do or whatever.
Sounds like we could get the committee together with the
Yeah.
code enforcement officer, maybe look at ordinances and then a plan of attack, and
Correct.
then bring something to the council and discuss it further.
I have a comment, if I may. I was somewhat alarmed to discover that the city had received a booklet of infraction announcements, whatever you call them. Given that the council has not established what the fine rates will be, it seems to me that we're putting the cart before the horse. I think we ought to try going to those individuals who are violators and seeing if we can get them to do it voluntarily. During the COVID epidemic, I don't think we want to be imposing $250 fines on people in Harrington.
So I'd agree with that. Two things, the book was just, as I understand it, was just brought as a,
Starting point.
yeah, just as something to look at.
Yeah.
And
I don't have
Glorified stationery.
yeah, well, to answer the question, this is before most of us were on the council, but under Dylan, I guess there was a booklet or ticket book, let's call it. And I don't know if the city received it or it was in the works to get one. I don't know, maybe Justin could clarify that. I think he might have been around for that. But this is a 08 ordinance, and for the most part, people are accommodating or acquiescing to requests by the city. There hasn't been any problems. But according to our current code enforcement officer, that there's some that aren't. And I don't know who they are, honestly. There's been reference, but I can't say. There's people I haven't even heard of, honestly, in the town. And I don't know who they
I don't
are.
think that we're at the point to hand out those citations,
Yeah.
Peter. That was just something so that we could look at and see what it was like.
Yeah.
I think we have a lot of legwork to do, like David explained with the ordinances and stuff before we get to that point. But I think that was just for our visual, just so we could see what it's like.
Yeah, we have some businesses in town. It's going to take them a long while to comply. And I don't think we should be handling them in a rough fashion with regard to fines.
No, we don't. I don't see that we're in a position to give out fines at this point. We've got to start kind of at the bottom here. We've got a lot of legwork to do.
But I'd like to also state that, keep in mind that we have an ordinance to follow, but that doesn't, the person or people or business has a right to come to us or come to the council and plead their case. And basically what that means is come to an agreement, like, hey, this is happening and we want this done. And they say, well, they'll argue and plead their case. And we'll come to an agreement. Well, we'll give you a year to get that, or 90 days or whatever. They have to meet with us, the council or the code enforcement officer as well, to figure something out, try and help the situation, mitigate it. And before any of that, it's the infractions are for the people that just don't show up for the hearing and don't care and just.
Refuse to cooperate.
That's what I'm getting out of all that, yeah, cooperation out of all the MSRCs and other towns. It's the ones that get a letter and they just disregard them. And that's when the fines come into place. But prior to that, any fines, there definitely will be discussion with the property owner, business owner, or whatever, with the council come to agreement. The fines are a last minute ditch or last minute.
Last effort.
Yeah,
The last resort.
yeah, last resort. Thank you.
Sounds like we got quite a bit of work to do on that, but committee and the code enforcement officer, and it's like there's gonna have to be a lot of ducks in a row there to get things where we want it. Okay, did you want to strike?
Yeah, the current ordinances,
Okay.
because that will kind of fall under that.
Okay, so we're going to strike discussion of current ordinances. Move on to discussion on council communications. I believe that was David's as
Yeah.
well, so.
My only question, do we have a policy regarding how councilmen are contacted? And the reason why I bring that up is, are we gonna, we have our city computers, emails and stuff now. Is that gonna be our main link for information? Years ago, I don't know how they did it, probably by mail or a phone call, but so we know where to go for, our point of contact. Instead
So
of
I'd
a-
say I don't know of any policy that's in place for, formality of what the go-to is, but I would definitely say that email, being that we have our city email accounts and iPads, that would probably be should be the formal line of communication other than, if you see somebody or want to call them. But
Sure.
that's definitely what I use. That's how I know I can send an email out to everybody and they can read it especially if it's not a time pressing issue, that they can read it at their leisure. The one thing that I'd add to that, David, is definitely, it's nice. I know it's kind of a pain, but it's nice to get some kind of a receipt, just to make sure, if there's questions, you can respond with a question, talk in person, however it's done, just to know that council members are receiving that information.
Okay, yeah, I just know where to look. I know I don't have a smartphone, and I know it's very easy for people to do a lot of, it's handy. But just so we don't miss nothing, when it comes to meetings or whatever happens, is that I know to look on my city email, and that's where it's going to be.
Yeah, that's what I would say that is the place to go.
Okay,
And if it's something time pressing, whatever that may be, I'd obviously try to get a hold of each person
my phone or something.
by phone or stop by or what other means are necessary.
Smoke
make-
signals.
Sure.
Okay, well, that was my main question regarding communications, what we're gonna do, because we kind of, I'm sure 10, 20 years ago, we didn't have this faster, right? Nobody had smartphones as we use them today. And how they did it, I don't know, the calls or whatever, but I'll just know. And Peter, I think we'll get your email straightened out for you.
Yeah,
So that
I'll talk to Stephen. He's good at that. I
Stephen,
didn't have access to email before tonight.
there's no sound to Justin.
Uh-oh.
You're fine. That's from earlier.
Oh, it's from earlier. I just got it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Nope, you're fine.
Dodged a bullet. I was just wondering how long we didn't have sound.
Well, we're going back on the agenda to mayor update.
Yeah.
Start over again.
call a meeting to order.
Okay, thank you, David. Clerk's interview process. Was that you that was added?
If I did or not, I think it's just, you updated, we updated it, so
Yeah, we,
so we're good to go.
okay, we're current up to date and everybody knows what's going on. As far as, just to make it clear, as far as going further with other interviews, I will send that information out ahead of time, make sure everybody knows if they choose to take part. Okay, West Adams Street project. Just a quick discussion, I guess I'll start off. Did everybody get the email that I sent, was forwarded from TD&H?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody,
How long ago did you send that? You recollect?
oh boy, testing my memory now.
Was it within last
Um,
week?
Had to have been at least last week.
Because I haven't,
This is on April 26th.
okay, so no, I haven't. Archives.
I just wanted to touch on that, see if there's any questions or comments or kind of open it up.
Okay, yeah, it's under here.
Is that a goal for this year?
Correct. Yep. In fact, I have paperwork here that I need to sign as long as everything's kosher that so that they can get it out for advertisement for bid.
Do they have a, refresh my memory, is there a projected start date for that, or do we have to wait until the bids and everything are in to decide?
Correct. We won't know that yet.
Documentation. I just got a question. Is all the infrastructure underneath that, like water line, sewer, gas and all that, is that all up to date? You know?
Yeah, I've talked with Scott on it. He said everything's pretty good shape.
Everything new except for the two service lines that go to Wilson's and Shockers.
Is that something, I mean, it's not a ton of money, but is that something that we should plan for going forward? It would make
Yeah.
sense to replace those as construction's going on.
Yeah, we could get them done hopefully before the construction even starts.
Okay, so we could do those beforehand, before they even take control of that road. Okay,
And I seem to remember at one point, Tim Tipton mentioning to me that they had problems sometimes with the sewer backing up down by the RV park at some points in time. Is there anything infrastructure wise to
That's
that?
all being replaced brand new.
Okay,
Current schedule.
Good.
Maybe December still though.
okay,
If it does back up now, it's returned.
okay. Good enough.
And there's nothing else we should look at if we covered that. on that?
yeah, I didn't have much to add. I just wanted to let you guys know where we're at. I have the paperwork that I have here is a bid authorization form. I need to get to TD&H, and that just says that we are okay with them advertising to get bids on the project, but I just wanted to make sure nobody had any crazy pressing questions before that happened.
No, my only concern was the infrastructure underneath, so.
Sure.
Seems so common to spend a lot of money and build a nice road surface
Cut it
and then
apart.
tear it up
Yeah.
a week later, a year later, they
I
go.
mean,
rip it through.
it's definitely inevitable at some point, and hopefully that point is far down the road. But
Does the city, I think I've asked this some years ago, the councils, does the city have any moratorium on projects or city streets like that? In other words, you can't touch it or rip it up for X amount of years. Some have a year.
Well, if
5
someone's
years.
water's broke, they'd be unhappy to hear about that moratorium.
Yeah, but
If
it just,
if the project gets all new plumbing and stuff, you could do that, but if you don't, then.
right, that's why.
Because we replaced all the lines, the service lines in front of the school, but we didn't replace the main because they didn't have the money for it, and the main leaked the next year.
Well,
And several times since.
it usually, yeah, that makes sense. And it usually happens when somebody builds something and wants to add gas line to their place or something of that nature. Yeah, emergencies, like you said, Stephen, yeah, that's something different that wouldn't even
Yeah.
be a factor there. I mean, yeah, you have to do it.
you're talking a plan, something like somebody just said, the gas line or something. If they
Yeah.
if they want to do that, then need somehow to have that done before that surface is redone.
Or they can't do it, the moratorium, you know, a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know of anything like that that exists.
A couple of years ago, they actually updated all the gas in that area, and they plumbed all the way across the backside of Stevens lot for in the future in that area.
As long as we're on the subject of infrastructure, whom do we have in charge of DOE reporting, monthly reporting now? Since Scott is, I presume, temporary, is that still your
I'm still doing it.
responsibility?
Yeah.
And Casey's doing her part, and hopefully the new guy, if he gets on board, can do his part.
Good.
I would think that it would take some time. So say that our new employee did, say we hired him and he had his group two to where we didn't need, I still think there's gonna be a period in there where we're gonna have to kind of change into the guards as far as Casey goes, and probably keep her on board. I don't know what that time length would be.
We should make an effort not to falter on that. Another fine.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions, comments on the, Justin, do you have anything to add or any questions?
Nope.
Yeah, just want to make sure you're still with us mainly.
I have a question, if you don't mind.
Public comment.
Yeah, let's wait till public comment. We just have one more addition here and then we'll get to you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, that's the last one I have. We have an addition to the agenda from Stephen. And why don't you have the floor?
So in public comment from the last meeting, we were discussing with Randy Behrens the concern about the elimination of the inactive rates. And I offered a commitment to him saying that I would work towards chasing down a provision for snowbirds, or at least to have that discussion. One of the things that I was working on for the start of it is to even drive that discussion. I was trying to figure out where I was going to land in terms of the what I thought would be ideologically consistent, because at the same time that I don't necessarily have a angst about the concept of snowbirds having a provision for things. What I told him about the sewer being more expensive when it's not being used was confirmed by Andy Tom. And so I had some struggling to figure out how, even in a snowbird 3-month position, why would we incentivize behavior that's more expensive for the city? So in the position that I came to with that is that I'd like to look at, I'd like to put together a group of councilmen, an ad hoc committee, if with the mayor's permission, of those who would be interested in discussing a snowbird provision, period. But I guess my position with it is that I would look to say that there would not be a discount on the sewer because of the nature of it being more expensive when it is not being used. However, the base rate for water is not a base rate for service because it includes 5,000 free gallons. Those 5,000 gallons are not actually priced. So I think there is a ideological provision to say we can price those 5,000 free gallons how we wish, and we can make a discount for a period of time. I would recommend keeping the snowbird provision just for residential properties, not for commercial. That would be in the keeping with the spirit of it. But
Would that be a commercial zone thing, or would we?
Yeah, well,
We'd have to classify.
you could, yeah, I guess there's a number of ways in which you could address that, but I think that would help meet the concern. And I know even Sherry had expressed to us in a previous meeting the thought that if she was to go to Seattle and visit her daughter, I think was the example that Sherry gave, it could help cover situations like that and still allow the city to meet our financial obligations and trying to pass costs along to the citizens in the same manner in which we incur them. So if any councilman is interested, I'm going to try and meet that commitment to Randy to try and see if we can find an agreement as a council on making such a provision.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I'd send another email to the council members regarding some other stuff that ties on with that as far as disconnection fees and reconnect fees and that stuff. I think if that ad hoc committee or whoever that should be chooses to, I'd like to try to nail some of that stuff down. I actually had a question from Randy about disconnecting when they leave for the winter. So I'd like to throw that all in together and get all that kind of lined out so that we we have a plan, we need to know. And it's a very valid question, what happens if they want to shut it off, or what happens if they want to physically disconnect? What would happen if they did physically disconnect and either they chose 5 years later to a property to reconnect it, or all those different variables that can come up, so.
As it stands right now, Nathan and Scotty, what's happening now with this when they leave?
Well, if you, like, the old A&D building, we just connected the water to it. I don't know if you can justify disconnecting the sewer. If they have no water, they're not gonna use sewer. I don't know if they have that expense, but
That would fall solely on us, especially up front,
yeah.
to pay for those. And then obviously if
And
they
it
wanted
was-
to physically reconnect later, then they would be charged a
I
reconnection
think we
fee.
gotta survey all the towns in the county and find out what it costs for a connection fee, because ours are extremely low.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lady that wanted to disconnect her sewer because she wasn't using the house. And I said, why don't you just put up for sale instead of disconnecting the sewer and go to that expense? Well, I'll save money if I go to that expense, between 500 and 600 to unhook the water in the sewer. And I said, why don't you just sell the house instead? And well, I still want to disconnect it because I don't want to incur those costs. I said, well, if you put it up for sale, you're going to need water and sewer hooked to it. And she thought about it. She talked to her real estate agent. And the guy said, yes, you need water and sewer hooked to it. You don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of solidifies what we've talked about before.
And she has since sold the house. So,
But currently, I take it in Randy Barron's case, was he getting a discounted rate? And no meters or anything were shut off, it was just a discounted rate, just back up and go.
I think they usually physically turn the valve off,
well, we
correct?
physically turn off the meter for like a Snowbird and then remove the garbage can. But if you charge Joe Blow for full rate because it has hooked to his building, how can you justify giving somebody a Snowbird rate? You got to think about that. I don't know how you could do that.
Well, that was
Even if it's just the sewer or water, I don't know.
because, well, I can only answer for myself, but part of it is the concept that I can't ideologically find the consistency to do that for sewer. But for water, because there is no true water base rate, the lowest rate you can possibly pay for water includes 5,000 gallons with it. So in the absence of there being a true base rate, we have a liberty to price it. And I'll also be clear in this. I would like to restructure our water rates such that we have a true base rate, that there is no included water with it, which would mean that the base rate would come down, and that with the ideal that there wouldn't be any change, right? That if you're using 4,000 gallons or 5,000 right at, there's no change. This is not a price increase. It's to restructure that so that there isn't, because like, for instance, with a Vista, I don't get my gas meter and 20 free therms. I don't get my electric meter and 1,000 free kilowatt hours, right? It's the base rate is the base rate. I don't understand why I get the whole wintertime, we want to encourage people, but we just not read the meters and not charge, usage in the winter or until it comes back into the spring anyways, right? Is what I understand is that when the springtime comes, they calculate that difference and it all comes back out. So I don't understand why there's a need to have that in there with it, but while it is in there, I think there's an ideological consistency to be able to do that.
That makes sense, Steve.
Yeah.
Scott, this is just for my own curiosity. It's probably been addressed, but I probably wasn't paying attention. When we physically separate the line, do you actually dig down, cut, and cap it?
I dig down to the main, and there's usually a service valve. Hopefully. There's usually a service valve, and I shut that off, cut a 6-inch piece of pipe out and plug the service valve and leave it off.
Okay.
If they want to come hook it up, it's gonna cost the expense of doing that.
The
Right.
hookup fee.
Okay. No, I was
At
curious
that
about that.
point-
We've
at that
discussed
point,
it.
We'd probably move the meter to a different spot.
Okay.
Depending, we can recover the meters on some of those places, but they're just scrap.
Right.
They're not even good scrap.
Okay.
Most of those aren't worth putting back in the ground 5 years later, somebody else buys it. I mean,
Once
that,
you have a meter that's been in the ground for 10 years, technically your meter's,
It's outlived its
it's
usefulness.
outlived its use.
Okay.
fully
No, I was just curious
depreciated.
about that. Thank you.
Question, Scott, how many hours do you estimate it takes to cut out a meter?
Well, it
Or
depends.
cut out-
Now, if I gotta cut asphalt, it's gonna be, I mean, we spent 3 hours, I think, unhooking the A&D building, 3 or 4 hours. But we dug it with the Vector truck. And so it wasn't a big, backhoe dig, and we didn't have to call for locates because we didn't use a digging rig, we used Vector, and so that's actually helpful in some ways, but
Well, and then once you do it, I'm assuming if you're cutting asphalt, there is most, if not all cases, an obligation to put the asphalt back on, and that's another cost.
yeah.
Yeah.
and if somebody's gonna unhook their water line for a year and you cut out the asphalt, there's gotta be an adjustment expense in there for
Right.
Mhm.
our labor. And that's not being addressed. I mean, we don't have any accounting for our labor and the supplies and the backhoe and all that stuff.
Because even with the reconnection fee, depending on the time and the work involved, it could actually still end up costing us money to disconnect them and then to reconnect at an interval, whether it
There
be
should
years.
be a fee set up for a disconnect.
Disconnect,
If you
hey.
don't want city services.
Yep.
anymore.
We're
It's
having to
gonna
do
cover
work
the
to do
cost
it.
Of our labor.
Right.
And all that.
Sure. Okay. Well, we'll have to decide on a committee for that. There's a lot of work to do there.
If there's interest, please contact me.
I think if you check around the county, we're probably $1,000 short on our water and wastewater hookup fees.
Question for the council. If we go to a Snowbird system, how many months a year out of a year would people consider to be normal or favorable?
To be determined.
Yeah. That'd be one of the details that would have to be worked out and presented.
Are you writing this down or do you have a really good memory?
Well, that's a good point, whether it be winter or somebody leaving in June, take them off in the summer would classify as a snowbird, right?
Well, and that's the thing that would need to be discussed is there's a lot of intent and what are we incentivizing or not. I think there's a lot of discussion that would have to go through with that, but to put context around it though, anything we would come to would inherently be would inherently be less permissive than what we had in place before. So it is, I think, relevant context to say that it's not, how would I put it? There could be potentially, it might be inconsistent in a situation for a person to have been super concerned about under what circumstances do we allow that when before there was no concern to it at all. So we'll have to come to an agreement that with the desire that we had in putting in place the removal of the inactive rates, what are we going to allow, at least until such time as for instance, the base rate for the water would be adjusted. So.
Okay. Everybody's happy on that? Okay. We're moving on to public comment. Sherry, you spoke up earlier. I'm gonna go ahead and let you go first if you're still with us.
I am still with you.
Okay.
The discussion on current court ordinances is that tabled or is that scrapped? I'm just curious about what the issue was or why it was on the list.
we're gonna table that for now. I think that's gonna fall into, the code enforcement.
Oh, okay,
Ordinance that were to be discussed was the ordinance, the nuisance and the junk vehicle ordinance and some of those. So I think those are gonna go hand in hand. So we just
Okay.
didn't feel it need to be a separate discussion point.
okay. And my second question, I used to come in when Bunny was the clerk and get the minutes and the bills from previous meetings. And I'm wondering if that's still available.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, that's it.
It usually takes a little while to get the minutes written and
Oh,
then.
yeah. Yeah.
Yep,
Okay, thank you.
yep. Okay, any other public comment from anyone with us here physically or anyone online?
Move to adjourn.
You got a question.
Oh, go
Sorry,
ahead, Jess.
didn't see
Sorry,
it.
I didn't see your hand.
We've got a website for the city. Why don't we put the minutes on that website?
Because one of the council member has limited amount of free time available. Because the city gets all of its technical time for free, and I just have not had time to implement such things. But my intent in the long run is to make it so that both Nathan and our clerk have a repository where they can just simply copy a file in, and the rest of the system will put it online. With the exception of certain documents that are inherently private to do with personal records,
Absolutely.
everything else is subject to public records requests. So
I think
personally, I don't see a reason why we shouldn't make all of our documents that, again, are not specifically protected by law from public records requests. The rest of them should just be all made available online. And so my goal would be that she would get done with the note. In fact, actually, that she could even work on the notes in a folder that it saves, and people just be able to see that in a read-only fashion. But it takes time to set up, and we're getting there. There's been a lot of changes in the last year that have all required hours. So,
Second question, what are other cities doing about snowbirds?
I don't know. I don't think we've got,
Huh? You can. Comment on that?
yeah, that's something to be researched. I don't personally know the answer to that. I think that'll come
A lot
up.
of time, find out if other people even offer such a thing.
Sure. Has anyone heard of it
I-
anywhere else?
I have not
don't-
looked in. I can look to do that.
Deserves a few calls to find out. I think that's a good question, Jess.
Nathan, what was the question?
Fees on your vehicles. The state doesn't care if you leave the state, the country, or whatever. You better renew that license vehicle, otherwise you'll pay back for the time when you should have renewed.
Yeah. Justin, the question was if any other cities or towns within the county or close offer a snowbird provision, if that's even an option, other places.
Thank you.
No, I think the junk vehicle ordinance and then that's the ordinance stuff, and then as well as the utility rate, the snowbird provision and some of the other utility rate stuff. We got our hands full. I think there's a lot to be
In the handbook.
in the handbook.
And the
That's
fire truck.
getting there though.
It's getting
Yep,
getting close.
we're
We
getting
poured a
there.
lot of hours into that.
Yep. And thankfully there's grant money because a lot of money too.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, any other public comment or questions?
Where are you at with the handbook?
We just got a revised copy, a revision from the lawyer, just.
Partial revision.
That's true. So
Yeah.
got a little more work to do. He's got a draft copy that's still gonna take a little bit of revision, but was just sent to us, I think, 2 days ago.
The lawyer.
Yes, correct. And he told me in an email that he was still researching a couple parts of that to make sure that things are kosher and legal. And then we'll go back through it and go from there.
And
So closer to done than we,
by go from there, we had talked about, so the committee with David, myself, and Nathan have, I think, on all but one issue in which we're leaving it open-handed, have all come to agreement on the committee's recommendation. We've gone through the entire document from end to end. I think we've made a lot of good revisions. We've struck about, gosh, maybe close to 20% of the document,
Yeah.
which
Quite a bit.
I think is a wonderful win. And we're doing our due diligence to make sure that we're not leaving ourselves open for any problems. We've specifically asked Kelly in a number of instances if we've been too permissive with our desires on things. So that's part of, I think, what their research is about, is some areas it seems like we've wanted to be more permissive than some other cities, but like Harrington doesn't really need a social media policy in its handbook, which is currently in there. So it's those kind of things we're trying to tune it more for Harrington. Then when we get Kelly's final revision, the committee, us three, will go through to make sure it looks the way we asked him to make it look, and to see if we're good with it. And then at that point, it would leave committee to the council. The council will get a whack at it, and if the council has any changes, we go back to Kelly again with the final set of changes, comes to the council the last time, and then we can move to adopt.
Much better said than my explanation.
Is the council consulting with other municipalities on their handbook?
Nope.
No.
Why would you need to?
No, we're just trying to tailor it for what we, as a committee and
Well,
mayor think, and then like Steven said, it will obviously go to the entire council for.
And I guess we're trusting Kelly Cronkite's experience that he's worked on other such documents for other
Correct.
towns. So I guess I would say that to that point, Kelly would be our point of reference to other cities. I mean, not specifically from them, but contextually, we're not crafting a document from scratch. He has the context of knowing what generally goes into such documents.
And that's come up in discussion. He's made that point a couple of times. Well, most places don't do this, or most places do, or however that works, whichever way.
Yeah.
Research, he hopes to be done with that research by the end of the week, and then he will probably forward another draft to kind of his quote unquote final revision, and then we'll go through it again. Any other questions or comments?
Move to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
we have a motion to adjourn by Peter, seconded
I
by
know,
Levi. Any more discussion? I always worry about lag time, so I try to give anyone on there, but. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Okay, motion to adjourn passes 5-0-8-17.
Hey,
Thanks,
Jess.
guys.
Jess, can I talk to you for a second?
How do you get?
You're not in trouble, don't
worry.
I just have to qualify that when I
Is that
talk to
Fox,
That reminds me of that
I'm
song.
still learning this. I
Last order.
haven't sent an email.
What was, I didn't
I'm in
hear.
trouble now and I'll be in trouble again.
Usually when I say that I need to talk to the kids at school, they look at me like they're trying to decide whether or not to run.
Get back there.
Exactly.
We don't need to
No,
worry about
I was
changes.
wondering-
Again, this is a one-time.
Do we have
change.
the
This is
specs for the
end
fire
of
truck?
Display, I
Because
believe.
we're gonna advertise that I need the
And
model
auto
number, the engine
lock.
size, and everything.
That's.
You want
that's on
to
me.
stay
I
on
have
for-
them. I need to
Okay.
send it to
These
you.
are the
Yeah,
options.
if you can get them
have.
to me,
How
I
long
can-
do you want
I
to
can
stay on for?
Plug in the
Sure.
information
And then
and
I need
find
to
out.
make sure that when I send those to you as well, that remember the
There
online
you go.
access to the pictures? I need to give you guys that password so
Can
that
you
you
walk
can
me
get
through
those
how to
pictures.
download
Because I think I'm the only.
Well, these are all your new
fans
email.
have that.
messages.
She sent an email to us.
Yeah, see, they go back a ways here, but
Somewhat of a little
they
bit of
come in
history.
automatically when you're connected
It
to
probably
the
could.
network.
I mean, I don't
So
know how
if
much
you have
you guys
this
want
at
to
home
include,
and
but
you use that
it wouldn't
adapter
hurt
that I gave
anything.
you,
And just those
it
two
should
websites
connect
that
into your
I
internet
came up
and
with.
it'll just
Do you mind if we just
automatically
start
come
with
in.
those two and then see
If
if
they
we